This camera right here is far and away the most annoying camera I've ever owned, ever. Talking about still cameras, talking about video cameras, talking about phones. This thing is its own beast. This is coming from a person who does color grading kind of for a living, and so I'm used to raw, high data, really inconvenient cameras and editing and color grading, that kind of stuff. And this is a completely different animal. So let me talk about what happened, because this is super. It's weird. So I wanted to get a 360 camera because I wanted to do sort of GoPro stuff, and I wanted to try 360, but I wanted to be careful and get what I thought was the cheapest 360 camera I could afford. That still did two lenses with internal stitching, so that I wouldn't have to figure out my own way of stitching two completely disparate images back together and make it work. And so I ended up with the 361X, which I think is the first or second model. Pretty old now, but still wasn't cheap. I don't understand why, other than it's just not getting adopted. But there's a bunch of newer versions out. This is what I got. And I gave it every opportunity. Really, the plan was like a better GoPro, like a super GoPro. Because I was used to the action cam form factor of like a GoPro. And this, because it's got two lenses and basically, a full global view, you can recompose. You're never going to miss your shot because it's always going to be looking in the right direction, in theory. And it does that pretty well, I'm not going to lie. Once you go through their software, it hides the post or the pole that you have to put it on, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, so let's talk about the first couple things that I noticed that surprised me as someone who's owned a bunch of cameras and just is a person in society. I couldn't get this thing to work when I first bought it, because you have to turn it on using the serial number that's in the battery door with the Insta360 phone app. And that's the only way to turn it on when you start. You can't do it at a computer. You can't just turn it on. You have to validate the app with the serial number, which means the app and my email address is forever tied to this serial number. But also, I had an old Android phone and it was not compatible with the software, so I had to borrow my dad's iPhone in order to get the camera to wake up for the first time, which is both humiliating and also, I don't understand that. Is that a thing now? Like, I tend to buy cameras that don't tend to have this level of integration with phone apps, so I don't know. I feel like maybe this is a thing. I feel like DJI stuff probably does this. I don't know. I don't own any DJI stuff. But at least if you want to get into 360, yeah, you're gonna have to have a phone not old. So that's the first thing. Shame on me. Embarrassing for me. Also, the only way to monitor the image on this particular one is using a phone, because this screen just tells you data. It's not really an image. So monitoring the image is out of the question. Also, pushing the files really quick is out of the question. You got to use the memory card. So let's talk about that. This is the one and only tripod mount for the camera, and it blocks the memory card. So almost always you're going to have this thing on a stick because it's got the form factor of a bar of soap, iPhone style, very slippery, especially with its silicone hood, which gives me real, man, silicone slippery technology has come a long way. I didn't know. But yeah, it's impossible to hold, basically. So you got to put some kind of tripod screw into it to get it to behave the way you want. Again, it hides the pole pretty good, but that's where the memory card is. This is supposed to be a waterproof camera. I'm not convinced that it is, based on the fact that it's got an exposed port here. Maybe it's not a waterproof camera. I don't know. Either way, the memory card right there, that memory card is under more tension than I've ever experienced any memory card ever, and I almost chip my nail every single time I try to get it in or out. It is like shocking how hard it is to get it in and out. This is a 64 gig card. I have 128 gig cards that I'm not using. I think it's because this particular one maxes out at 64 gigs. I'm pretty sure the newer ones you can go much higher, but that's why I have that 64 gig card in there. Now I can't get it back in. There we go. Yeah. So form factor wise, the GoPro Square makes sense to me. If you just want to stand it up on stuff, GoPro Square makes sense. If you want to duct tape the GoPro Square to something, that makes sense. This thing requires you to have some kind of rigging or pole or something just to even stand up on its own. Yeah, because you don't want to do this. That's one of the things I figured out very quickly is where the seam is, where the video seam is, which is where they have to mate the two images. That's the worst part resolution wise. So you don't want anything like if I shot it like this, it'd look messed up because that's where the seam is. You have to have boring stuff at the seam usually. So you usually want, one lens facing where you think you're going to go. And so you can't even do this. You can't even lay it down because then you're basically everything you're looking at is on the seam. It sucks. Which gets me into the software. I already talked about how the app made me feel inadequate. Again, I'm a colorist. I work with red footage, RAW, RE, Blackmagic RAW, which is not RAW really, but it is. I'm used to really complicated, really bit dense, footage. I'm used to pushing it through my computer. All editing softwares that are, professional grade these days can sort of tolerate footage with the right hardware, raw footage. This thing, the only way I could figure out how to use this footage is to put it through its own proprietary app first, and and then export it out, and then bring it into. I use DaVinci Resolve with sort of the image already baked in, basically. I think I can still recompose in DaVinci Resolve. I've tried and I've sucked at it, but I'm sure if I tried harder, I could do it. But it has its own proprietary Insta360 software that you basically can edit and recompose the footage. And if that's all you're doing with the footage, it's probably fine, other than it's not very well optimized and it crashes quite a bit. So that's not great, but I'd chalk it up not to bad development, but the fact that nobody seems to, I just don't feel like there's a lot of people using this. Certainly not as many as like Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, where there's, like a subculture of people who have workarounds and fixes, and there's also a sort of an impetus of the software developers to continue fixing stuff and taking bugs out and stuff. None of that is happening with this Insta360 software. It's really hard to use and it's really slow and it's not optimized. And I have a pretty heavy duty computer, and it still is like it's as if this is, I believe it's like 5.6 or something K files, which is big but not huge. My computer thinks it's like 12K or 18K footage. Like it's my computer basically is just like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. So all to say, if I had a nice phone, would my experience be worse? It'd be better. Would it be significantly better? Would it be so good that I could consider this a camera that I use every day, a camera that I trust, a camera that I pull out and can just handle? No, everything requires a plan with this thing. Not least which, GoPro style batteries, which are not big. So yeah, I believe this is bus powerable, so I could mount this somewhere and plug an external battery in right there and get it to run. I should probably test that, but honestly, that will require a lot more rigging, and it's already so frustrating to rig to begin with. Maybe it's a generational thing, because I'm used to, you pick up a camera, there's a battery in it, there's a memory card in it, you flick a switch and it turns on, and then you're good to go. You're in camera mode. It takes pictures, it takes video, it behaves. Even my phone, which by Insta360's opinion is just trash will do that. I can open my phone and I can swipe to the Photos app, and I can take photos and video, and it behaves like a camera-ish. The camera I'm shooting on, battery, lens, media, flip the switch, and it wakes up and it behaves like a camera. And I can take out the memory card and I can put the memory card into my computer and I can edit right away. My phone, it's a little bit more annoying because I got to find a way to push the images from my phone onto my computer, but it can be done. It's not that hard. Even if you want to do that in the first place, most of the phone footage just goes to the internet anyway. It's different. Insta360 is different. I haven't touched all the other, like app-based Chinese models of camera like DJI, and I'm sure there's a bunch of others I can't think of. I can only think of Insta360 and DJI. But if this is how it's going to be, ignoring the fact that it's a 360 camera, it's too annoying for me. Acknowledging the fact that it's a 360 camera, if this is as good as it gets, I just don't see 360 being a thing ever, because it's so frustrating and it's really expensive for what it is. It's probably 5 to 10 times more expensive than what it should be, because nobody gets it, and there's no reason to improve on anything because nobody seems to get it. So I feel like maybe this is a dead end, which sucks, because I would like to be. I've spent months trying to figure out how to make a 360 camera be its own thing. Like lean into the 360 camera of it all. Point of view stuff, 360 degrees of viewing where you can watch a movie and look around. The reality is, when it comes to movies, usually where the camera is facing, it's on purpose, and it's actually harder, anecdotally, to get someone who has the ability to look all around themselves, to be facing the right way for the right moment. Because if you're just watching a video that's, a 360 video, you don't usually have good enough clues. The way your eyes, your ears, your posture, the way you live in the world, can clue you into which way you should be facing. It's harder to do it that way. So, very frustrating. I don't think I'm going to sell it because it's not worth anything to sell, even though I spent frustrating amounts of money to buy it anyway. But as far as like integrating it into my workflow, I cannot figure it out. It's too frustrating. There's friction, isn't that the phrase? There's too much friction, where even my fancy camera, I can pop out a memory card, or I can take the hard drive off and plug it into my computer, and I know how to go from there. Whereas this, I got to roll the dice that, the footage is in good enough shape that it can go through Insta360's editing compiler thing first, and then I drag it in. It's like a whole extra like step and a half that is actually slower than my editing. So it's just, yeah. So I don't know. I realize this is on the heels of a new Insta360 camera that just came out, and I yeah, I don't know. Maybe Insta360 can take some YouTubers or some filmmakers, probably not me, let's be honest, out into the jungle, and teach them how to really use it the way they think it's supposed to be used, because clearly I don't get it. It seems to only work on the end of a stick, and it's just the looking down point of view. That's really all that it's useful for, which sucks, because you can already do that with a GoPro, or whatever equivalent that's better than a GoPro right now. Doesn't Sony make a better one? So yeah, slippery soap bar that is just, every time I reach for a camera, I almost grab it, and then I go, it's gonna double how much time I have to work on it after the fact, if I get it to work to begin with, because I have to remember to charge the battery, and I have to remember to clear the memory card, and I have to remember that it sometimes turns itself off or stops recording, or it just does stuff that I can't predict, and I don't have a phone, which it keeps making fun of me for, to sort of troubleshoot that. So I can just kind of turn it off and turn it back on and hope for the best. Whereas everything else, camera wise, doesn't have that extra thing in the way that is requiring an app. And then and then in post it's just a real nightmare. So I don't know. I It just kind of seems like on the highest like Hollywood level, if you're gonna do 360 footage, which it doesn't seem like anybody really is, you're gonna have to suffer through the workflow. But to translate that down, like, okay, last anecdote. There's a terminology for what's called a crash cam, which is usually a smaller, cheaper, more expendable camera that you put in the stunt car for the crash, with the expectation that it probably might, or most likely will, get destroyed in the crash, but in the process it will record the epic footage that only that camera can get because of where it's placed. It's a disposable camera. You scale that down and you end up with a GoPro. GoPros are literally just crash cams. They're wide angle lens. They're small. You can put them anywhere, and they're designed to be sturdier than a traditional cinema camera. And a lot of times they're waterproof, and a lot of times they have better sound tuning for ambient, wind noise and that kind of stuff. So that's the ideal. You can scale down from, a Hollywood crash cam down to a GoPro. If you scale down from a 360 rig down to this, it's the same amount of trouble. The only difference is at the high level the rig is big, and at this level it's a slippery bar of soap. So it's not like, it doesn't seem like it's that helpful. So I don't know. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground, and I'm going to keep trying to figure out if there's a way to make this camera work for any kind of working for me. But honestly, it sits next to the rest of my cameras, and I do that mostly to, shame myself into try to use it, but it's just so frustrating. Yeah. So you can't love all your babies, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you done 360? Am I just so incompetent, and there's a way to make 360 work that I haven't figured out? Let me know. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you next time.